Okay, welcome to join today's community meeting. First of all, for the some updates on the overall status. For 1.14.1, so the original release date is around August 5th, but right now we have some we need some more time to prepare the environment and run the release process, like the E2E testing and the CV scan. So we want to propose for a delay around August 26th. So we want to check if that is okay for or that it work with all of you. So Wes, Scott and Shubham, does that work for you?
I think it does. I think Scott mentioned that earlier. That was fine.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. Then let's make the tentative release date on 26th. And for the issues, we are good on track for the 1.40.1 issues, and there is only two ones, and this one is just for cherry pick. I think this has been merged. Let me check, but if not, there is only one cherry pick for that. And this one we need some more discussion, and we will. I think Shubham will discuss it later. And these are and except these two ones, we have closed all the other ones. Well, we are good on the issues.
Shubham, did you have another issue, or was that second one the one you were talking about earlier today? We potentially wanted
No,
one.
this is a different one. I've added in my status both a PR for this as well, and there is another issue.
Okay, so
Which is,
if the other issue we're interested in 1.14.1, we might
yeah,
put a target on that. Let's do.
if it's possible, yeah.
Okay. This is for 1.1, and for 1.15, the feature freeze date is on 28th this month, by the end of this month, and we are keeping tracking the candidate list, and we have several of them, and we will check by the end of the by the time of the feature freeze, and to move more from this list to the milestone. Right now, I think Scott, this one should be okay to move to the milestone. Right?
Yes, I'll mention it again, the issue with my status as well, but I'm basically starting that this week. So yes.
Okay, we will move this to the milestone, and for these three ones, they are actually covered by the two design PRs, and we will check if we can make a consensus so that we can merge the PR by the feature phrase. And if so, we will be able to move them to the milestone. And so right now we will keep this 3-1 in the candidate for now. Okay, that's for the overall status. Personal update. I'm working on the data mover microservice task, and also created two PRs that cover the issue mentioned just now about the backup repository configuration and the backup PVC configuration. And right now these two design PRs are ready for review. And about the data mover microservice tasks, the overall status is also good on track, and three PR has been created and one is merged. So we have we will submit a new PRs, new following PRs. But one thing is from we have some difficulties to review the PRs timely because some of the members are working tightly on some internal tasks. So So here, so we basically will have one dedicated reviewer. So we still need one more reviewer. So Scott and Shubham, could you help to review these 10 more tasks, and
Sure.
so that they can be time merged?
Yeah, sure thing.
Okay. So here, we have there are two open PRs, and I think we can. Wait a minute. Yeah, I think we can focus this one, and because the following PRs just are just depending on this one, so we can focus on this one, and once this one is merged, I will ask you to review the other one. Okay. Yeah. Shubham, you will help to work on this to on the review, right? Or Scott or Shubham, you
Yeah,
both
yeah.
work
I think
on
we'll
Yeah,
it.
probably both have a look at it.
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
So you want exposure, then watcher, right? That's it.
Yeah, and exposure first. Exposure
Yeah.
first because the following PR does depending on this one.
Okay.
So yeah, okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's from my side. And Scott, please.
Okay, yeah. So the relating to the backup performance improvements, we got 3 acts on the design PR. I think we're good to merge this now. If anyone wants to, if one of the reviewers wants to merge this, assuming there's no objections. As I said, I started the initial work on the implementation today. So getting this merged would be good, just because that way, if I need to change any of this while I'm working on implementation, that'll already be merged, so it'll be available. So that way, if anything in my implementation differs from this design for some reason or another, I can edit the design at the same time, so any reviewers can see the change and why it was made.
Okay, okay, okay. Thank you. And Shubham, please.
Yeah, so regarding the first issue where we see temporary errors on volume snapshot content, I had a proposed PR earlier, but then we changed a lot of code for Velero plugin for CSI. We converted, merged actually the content part to volume snapshot progress method, and also merged in Velero core. So I created another draft PR. If you guys could take a look at it and see if this works.
Yeah, this is the issue for 14.1, right?
Yeah, yeah, this is the issue that you were asking about earlier.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I think Xun will work. Will review that, and I will also have a look on that.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
okay, thank you.
And there's another issue that I created today. So in Velero 113, we introduced a restore finalizing phase, right? And that we patch the PV if it is dynamically provisioned to restore some custom
Mm,
settings that we have in place in the backup. So in that patching phase, there is a timeout, like PV patch maximum timeout. So in our scale testing, what we observed was where there were 1,000 pods and the workflow was CSI, it was timing out, and eventually the pods were in running state but post the restore failure. So basically we want to expose this timeout and make it configurable for the users. So I have a draft PR in place for that as well, if you could take a look at it. And
yeah,
we would like this to be targeted for 141. So
this one, right?
yeah.
This is yeah, this is issue. Okay, let me first add 1.14.1 candidate. Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
target 114.1.
Yeah,
okay. Let me try this one, and okay. So what is the hard coded timeout value?
it's 10
Right now,
minutes
10 minutes. So you mean that you mean when there are lots of PVs to be resolved or to be backed up the 10 minutes timeout is not enough, right?
Yeah, that's what our scale testing reported. So keeping it hard, anyways, keeping it hard coded is not the way to go, right? Let's make it configurable so that we don't face such issues later.
Uh, I'm just thinking one the other way is like it looks like this bunch of code that is to patch the PV after uh so after the restore, it's likely caused several issues, right?
Yeah,
So and
we
not
had gone through this.
all the user or not all the cases require this post restore patch actually. So
Yeah,
I'm
so
just thinking it's just a good idea to make this option optional feature. Like we only when user ask this, we do this.
That might make sense too. I think we still, the thing is that sometime I think it was in the 1.12 development cycle, we went through and decided we wanted to get rid of all the hard coded timeout values, because any timeout value that we hard code, someone's going to have a cluster somewhere in a situation that it's going to be too small. And so we went through and found all the hard coded timeouts in the code and got rid of those and made them all configurable. And then this is an example of a new timeout that was added since then that was hard coded again. So I think making this optional might make sense, but I think we still want to avoid a situation where we have any hard-coded timeouts where we say, oh, it should never take more than 10 minutes, because some user is going to have a cluster where, it takes 11 minutes.
Yeah, and so from just a personal, I just think I'm just thinking is it too a low level thing that to expose a flag to users because we probably not able to to explain clearly what is this flag about.
I mean, if you want to make it as a config map or something else, I just think in general, I think we need to have a solid rule that there are no hard-coded timeouts that cannot be changed without recompiling the code, because that's just a recipe for a user being able to, not being able to use Velero in that case. So I think, we can talk about what is the most user-friendly way of making it configurable. But I think having no way of configuring it at all is not really a good option.
Okay, so if we want to change it here, we want to make this up to expose this flag and also expose something like make the feature optional flag, right?
Yeah, optional flag, but I think that would be a separate task.
Okay.
Yeah, like skipping the patch workflow, right? That's what you mean. So I think that can be a separate task. But yeah, if we want to make it optional, then we could expose it as a user config.
Okay. So yeah, I think I understand what this is about and what the fix will be going. So we'll discuss this offline also and to see if we have more input. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Thank you. And Jim, please.
I'm working on the repository maintenance job configuration design. Still working on modify coding comments. Welcome more discussion on this topic. And another thing I'm working on is the E2E enhancement tasks. Um, one PR is created, but still working on it to because after bumping to Inco Run 2, some configuration, for example, the filters are not working. So I also need to resolve that to make the PR merge. And that's all from my side.
Yeah, thank you. And after I did this, we actually add two similar configuration. That is the repository configuration and the repository maintenance job configuration. And the maintenance job here maintenance job configuration. We primarily want to solve the configurations or to to address the configurations at the time of the job scheduling or related to the job scheduling, like the affinity or node selector or concurrency or the resource limit or request, that kind of high level things. And the backup repository configuration is about to configure the backup repository behavior, like the cache, the features, something like that. So that is some kind of clarification about the difference of these two configurations. Yeah. Yes, thanks, Gene. And the Tiger, please.
Hi, so this week I did some studying on the ingress on different clusters. I will make more updates to the download API design in the coming weeks. And then I have some PRs ready. Those are linked.
Okay.
And that's my status update.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
These PRs are primarily for 115, right?
It's not urgent. Just whenever you guys are okay.
Okay, we will check that.
Yep.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. And that's for the status and discussion topics. So yeah, Tiger, please.
Yeah, so I think in previous meetings we discussed this issue where we have a scenario where the restore completed by the Velero server, but the API server was down, so we cannot make an update to the custom resource. So we want to make sure that if an API server is not available, that we recover from that by retrying or some other mechanism in the future. So we haven't came to a conclusion last time on how to resolve this. So just want to see if you guys have any thoughts on resolving this long term. Yeah, that's.
You know, for long term, right? Or short term.
I think we're already carrying this in our downstream, so we just want to, I guess, see the end of the tunnel. Like, what would be an appropriate upstream fix that we can all agree on in the future? Yeah.
Yeah.
We made a fix downstream for OADP because we had users that were already hitting this, and so we needed a fix now. But ideally, this is something that really anyone using Velero could hit, and we'd like to have a solution in the upstream project. So you know, if we agree upon a solution upstream, then we could eventually get rid of the patch that we're carrying downstream. So because we have a fix downstream, it's not an urgent thing to fix now. We just want to get it right and get something upstream in Velero, because you know, chances are someone else outside of OADP is going to hit something like this as well at some point.
Yeah. Actually, I think this kind of issue is a general issue. Not only I mean a general issues. Not on it may cause by many cases, many reasons. For example, sometimes the API server is down, or sometimes even the node is down. I previously saw an issue about they are doing the node maintenance every Wednesday, so they want some recovery or retry. Anyway, just keep a Velero backup result running after, continue to run after the maintenance. So for this kind of issue, I think we can think about them in the same way. So personally, I think we cannot solve all these problems just by modifying the code, because just as I mentioned for the issue I mentioned just now, all the node have been offline. We have no way to finish the backup restore or to resume the backup restore after the node is up again, right? So I think if we talk about the long term, I think we need to develop some kind of thing like the backup window or restore window from the user experience of from end to end, so that user will not run the backup or restore during this the time that their system is down or being maintained. That is something.
That makes sense for some problems. That won't actually solve the problem that we're dealing with, because in the situation that we're trying to fix, the user doesn't have control or knowledge ahead of time. You know, there's this period where the API server is going to be down for maybe 2 minutes, but the user can't predict when that will be, so they can't just not start a backup then.
And just real quick, I wonder if we're conflating resuming a backup or restore with just, okay, something happened. This needs to move from in progress to failed.
Right. I mean, we're okay with failing this now. What we're not okay with is leaving it in progress forever, because that's an invalid state. It's not true. So it confuses the user. You know, that they go and they look at their backups and they see 5 backups that are listed as in progress, but not, you know, 4 of those 5 can't be in progress, because there's only one that's ever in progress, that's actually in progress at once. And so if this goes to failed, that lets the user know, okay, I need to run this backup again because it didn't work.
Yeah. So the focus is on the focus here is we are okay for failing the backup, but we just don't want we just need to update the backup to fail.
Right, and we can't update it right now while the API server is down. So the only thing we can really do is we can either retry in place, or we can requeue and try to fail later. Because the whole reason why we have this issue is that Velero issued the update call, failed because the API server was down. So the backup is still in progress. We either need to wait right here and try again, or we need to requeue and try again at some later point.
Yeah, for that, I think it's reasonable, and that is not something in the federal level, but we can treat it as a fix. And if so, I think personally, I think it will be better to retry until we can make it, because we don't want to you know, to how to say, to make this logic or this fixed logic scatter all through the, you know, the state machine of controlling the backup or restore. Like if we don't do that, we recur it, and we will see that we have a new state or new phase or new point in the state machine, and every case will have to take care of that new state, and that will make things complicated. So I think if we wanted to solve the problem that we want to, the API server is not coming for a short time, like 2 minutes or even 10 minutes, we can just wait it there to update it or to patch it until we can make it. That's from my idea from my side. Now,
yeah, I mean, I think the retry for some period of time again would solve the use case we're talking about that we run into, because the case that we've hit is usually a temporary outage where it's only I think they told us 2 minutes is approximately, you know, the most it would be. So, but like you said, even 10 minutes. The point is, the API server's down anyway, so there's no point in going to the next backup. We can just keep trying to update this. If we eventually succeed, then we're good. If we hit 10 minutes or whatever and we don't succeed, at that point, there's not much we can do, because if it's been down for 10 minutes and it's still down, chances are that API server is permanently down and the cluster's unhappy. And so at that point, you know, there's nothing we can do.
So this is about this one, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I think either one is acceptable. I think part of the you know, proposing both was we were trying to, you know, figure out which solution would be more acceptable, you know, for the Velero community. the one we're doing right now downstream is the requeue approach. But I think Tiger, the retry would be just equally acceptable for us, right?
Yeah, I think they both should be successful.
Okay. Okay, then I think we can check more comments with others. But from my side, I think the retry is better. And one more thing is like some precondition or prerequisite is like this retry is good enough if we only want to solve the out of the service for short time case.
I think so.
And
yeah.
we and that is one thing. So we don't want to add something in the feature level like the backup or resolve window, and we only to solve the failures in some commonly seen and critical point, like the updating the backup from the waiting for item operation to the terminal state.
Right.
And we don't want
or
to
from
solve,
in progress to waiting. Basically,
yeah.
at the point where one controller hands off to another is when so when we go from in progress to waiting for plugin operations, when we go from waiting for plugin operations to finalize, and then when we go from finalized to completed or failed. Those are the kinds of transitions where we need to worry about this here. I think to handle these longer term issues, I think that's where the backup restore window, if you want to have a feature to handle a cluster where this cluster is unavailable for Velero every day from midnight to 2 a.m. That's where the backup restore window makes sense. And you could I mean, we have to design that because that's got a lot of edge cases of when you can start a backup, what if the backup's in progress, all that. But that's a different use case. It's not critical for us right now, but it does make sense as a use case that could hit some users. But I think that's a completely different design and solution. It's kind of separate from this.
I like what I'm hearing. I just have a quick stupid question. If we're going to design something that will retry in some form of a outage, there's maybe a configurable limit to how long it retries.
We definitely want a timeout for that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And expose it.
We actually already have a retry. We have retries in other cases for different reasons. I think we already have it. I can't remember whether that's configurable or not, but yeah, I mean, retries are always going to be a limit. Kind of, you have to time box them because there's two different scenarios. There's a temporary outage that you want to retry for, and then there's if it's actually permanent, you don't want Velero stuck retrying forever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So our policy is like, okay, we see this critical point. We see in the user environment and something is just failing here. So we solve this line of code, but we just ignore others, even though we know that some other critical point also have this problem, right? That is our policy.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, right. I think that's right. I mean, for example, when you're restoring, you're making lots of API server calls. If I'm restoring a pod and the API server is down while I'm restoring that pod, that's going to fail. So Velero is going to mark an error. So we're going to get a restore failure. Then I think that's fine because again, that just I don't think we want to build retry in to every single item restore because that could potentially kill performance. I think you're better off logging the error and moving on for those kinds of things. But when you're actually updating the Velero CR from status, from in progress to whatever it's moving to next, I think that's the kind of thing where we're talking about here, where we want to again have this kind of retry built in, using one of the retry functions. Kind of similar to other retries, but obviously not quite identical because the circumstances are going to be a little bit different here.
Yeah, and even though we don't want to cover other cases, but we should keep something in mind that this other place may also have the same problem. So what we add, I mean the flag we add to users should be general enough so that we can use this one flag to cover all the cases.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to have more than one API server timeout retry, timeout, whatever. API server retry timeout, flag, single value that we use in all the places where we would need it.
Yeah, maybe even more general, like we don't need to mention the API server because
well, I think we may even be able to reuse one of the existing timeout. We should look. I mean, this is we have several timeout. That was one of the things we did back when we did this removing hard-coded timeouts. Is we tried to figure out common uses where the single timeout value would work in other places. So if we already have a timeout relating to object creation or object updates, for example, it might be 10 minutes right now set to, we could just reuse that one, so we wouldn't need to add a new configuration parameter. I think it's fine to do that. We just want to, again, we want to avoid making it hard coded. But if we can reuse an existing timeout value, so we avoid having to create a new configuration parameter, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, and for example, currently we have the results timeout, right? And results timeout may be able to cover this scenario.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I think that's going to be part of the design for this feature, is to figure out, let's look at the existing configurable timeouts as one of those appropriate, and then we'll reuse that one.
Yeah, so we will have a design, right? Since we have some user experience change.
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's probably a pretty small design, but I think it makes sense to have a design PR first, just because, again, like I said, it changes user experience. We have to decide which timeout value to use, which places in the code are going to get this change, and then once we agree on that, then the implementation will be pretty quick.
Okay.
Does that all make sense, Tiger, from your point of view?
Yeah, that makes sense. I can make a design. Yep.
Yeah, and when kind of change, do you have any input on this? I mean, the retry method or the recur method?
I also think maybe retry is a better method to resolve this issue.
I think the retry will also be easier to understand what we're doing. The requeue is a little bit hard to follow because you return an error from the reconcile, and then at some other place in the code where we update the failed and all that. And so I think the retry part, obviously the one difference here is that with retry, we're not setting things failed. We're just retrying the current operation. And if we hit the timeout, we just exit without making any change to what we're currently doing. So there is no make it failed here. It's just, we're retrying the original update to complete it or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. And another thing is, let me check. We don't need to put this in 1.14, right? Because it's not a general problem, and we can fix this in
115 is fine for this one. As I said, on the OADP side, we already have an interim solution where we requeue to fail for our 114. That I don't see I don't see we would need to change that in the .1 patch release. So I think focusing on 115 makes sense here from my point of view, at least.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's what we have for now, and we will discuss this offline and to check with others and check with Daniel. And if we have more input, we will add in the comment. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's all for our current discussion. Do we have any other things we need to discuss here? Okay, then we can finish off the meeting here today. Thanks for joining, and have a good day and good evening. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.